Hello. Welcome to Friday. How's it going, my friends? It's ECM. It's Friday, February 9th, 2024. And we got a lot of people from all over the place here today. It's nice to see you all. I noticed we had some folks from North Dakota, and I know we have regular viewers in Nebraska and all over the place. So hi to the upper Midwest. I hope you're all doing very well. We got all our usual international folks on here as well. So good to see you. Hi, Portsmouth. Hi, Scotland. It's always very exciting to me whenever I see folks from Scotland, because it's one of my favorite places on earth to visit. Okay. We are coming to you as always from occupied Tongva territory here in Southern California. Today, I am wearing a white ribbed shirt with my oatmeal colored, and it's got this funky stain on the collar that is not going away. I think I've bleached it accidentally. Anyway, I'm wearing my oatmeal colored sweater, which I clearly won't wear on the air anymore. Over top of my white shirt, and I have my thick gold hoop earrings in. I'm a pink-skinned, green-eyed, dirty, blonde-haired woman. I'm in my office in front of my plant, my bookshelf, and my standing lamp. And my pronouns are she, her. It's nice to see you all. Okay. I'm going to start with false equivalency, because I, like everyone else, I think is a little bit irritated about the fallout from the Her special counsel report concerning President Biden's accidental retention of his own classified notes. And the obvious political maneuvering in the report itself. It's very clear that there was no criminal conduct. The report contradicts itself by claiming that there's, first there was willful retention, and then there was no evidence of willful retention. And then on top of it, there's all these things kind of dumped into it about Biden and his memory and his age and all this other garbage. Nobody seems to be talking about the fact that Trump yesterday, right after the Supreme Court oral argument, said that Nancy Pelosi had caused the insurrection. And I am as fed up as everyone else is by the media's absolute obsession with creating these huge narratives that are so unnecessary around Biden's memory and Biden's age, right? Anybody who's worked with him has said that he is sharp as a tack. Anybody who is watching what has happened in our country since he was elected knows that he's doing a phenomenal job. And I'm as fed up with it as everyone else is. And I just have to issue a word of caution, because this morning over on the Patreon feed, hi, New Zealand. This morning over on the Patreon feed, for those of you who are not yet paid subscribers, you can join us at patreon.com/resistance-live to ask me questions in advance of every broadcast. This morning on the Patreon feed, there was a lot of flaming haired outrage at Merrick Garland. And I want to just say a couple of things about the responsibility or lack thereof that Merrick Garland has in this regard. Okay. So in a functioning American democracy, special counsels are appointed precisely so they were outside the scope of DOJ oversight. Now, here we all have a little bit of trauma because of what happened with Bill Barr and the Mueller report, and Barr kind of not releasing the whole thing and then releasing snippets of it, and then literally stepping in front of cameras and speaking falsehoods about what was in the report and what wasn't, in order to essentially modify the impact of the report when it was released. That is not the way things are supposed to work. The way that things are supposed to work is that a special counsel does their job. They issue a report. If they find there's a reason for criminal indictment, they indict. And all of that is done outside the scope of the attorney general. Okay. So what Merrick Garland did here was he released the report, and he released it in totality in the interests of transparency. That, in an ordinary situation, is exactly what an attorney general is supposed to do in a functioning democracy. Okay. So I want people to kind of tone down a little bit on the sort of verbal slaughter of Merrick Garland that has been going on the Patreon feed this morning. Because if you're going to blame anyone for this, the person that you should be blaming is special counsel Hur, who is a Trump appointee, who was appointed by Donald Trump in 2018, okay? Who literally is a partisan ideologue, who has made public statements in advance of his appointment by Donald Trump that are like really not very cool. And so one of the things that I want people to just be mindful of here is that you've got to lay blame at the feet of the people who are engaged in the actual wrongful conduct. All right. Merrick Garland is doing what any other functioning attorney general would do. Now, for those who want to complain about, the speed of the indictments, I'm going to remind everybody, Jack Smith was appointed as a special counsel like 2 years ago now. Dropped indictments very rapidly after being appointed, is not somebody who is like held back. Actually, 2 years is not accurate. It was like more like a year and a half ago. All of this, by the way, has happened at a very rapid speed once Jack Smith was appointed. Okay. Very rapid speed. I have to remind everybody whenever we talk about this, that there was a decade of prosecutions that emerged from Watergate. All right. So I want everybody to be really mindful that while we do have certain things that we can complain about Merrick Garland, this particular report is not one. And I don't want, somebody on the Patreon feed this morning was like, Joe Biden should fire Merrick Garland. That would be a disaster. Like, you want to talk about throwing gasoline on the fire of the ideas of selective prosecution and like deep state actions against Donald Trump and all sorts of other stuff. If Joe Biden were to fire Merrick Garland as a result of the Hur report, can you imagine what the fallout of that would be in an election year? Okay. So that's one of the things I want people to kind of like consider. And the other thing that I want people to consider while they're harping on all this stuff about the commentary and everything else, and the New York Times reporting on it and, all this stuff, is this. Okay. This is a 2-day long news story, max. 2 days long. 2 days long. Nobody's going to be talking about this by Monday. You want to know why? Because on Monday, Trump's going to file his appeal on absolute presidential immunity in the Supreme Court. And this report by this special counsel Hur, open and shut, no prosecutions, no indictments coming. This news story is going to be over. It's going to be over. So for everybody who's like flipping out about it right now, I actually think that part of what is going wrong this morning in the way that all of this is being reported is that folks are actually amplifying a story that needs to die. Okay? Like, there is no, Joe Biden gave this press conference last night at the White House. I hope you all saw it in real time. There's no question that he remembers the date that his son died, right? He himself was very angry and very sharp last night in the context of the way that he was talking about what had happened. And I don't see the point of amplifying this or getting outraged about it. I mean, Donald Trump is under indictment for 91 criminal counts in 4 different jurisdictions. You want to talk about a story that's not going away? It's that, right? It's that. And in the way in which everyone is just like running around with their hair on fire this morning about this report, we're actually doing more harm, right? This report is a nothing burger. Yeah, he threw in some partisan jabs. The New York Times took it and ran with it. I'm not really terribly pleased about that, but it's not going to be their front page story tomorrow. So, again, this is one of those moments where, and we've talked about this a lot on this broadcast in the last few weeks, because I know it's really hard. Believe me, like, I get it. I have all sorts of sympathy for the fact that the news cycle yesterday was more chaotic than I can remember it being in a very, very, very long time. And simultaneously, we've really got to stay focused on the big picture, okay? Like, Donald Trump literally came out yesterday after this Supreme Court oral argument and said that Nancy Pelosi had started an insurrection. I mean, and he does stuff like that every day, like every day. So, if you want to talk about something that actually potentially has an impact on the 2024 election, you should be talking about Donald Trump's very obvious mental decline, about his lying, about his corruption, about the fact that he's under indictment in 4 different jurisdictions for 91 criminal counts, and he's going to go to trial sometime this year. You want to talk about something related to someone's alleged, mental incapacity? Talk about that, right? one of the things that key messaging strategists are telling all of us right now who are progressives and Democrats is this: do not do the dirty work of the far right for it. Don't repeat their talking points, even to dismiss them. If you have to do it, and we've talked about this here, you got to do truth, falsehood, truth. It's called a truth sandwich. Joe Biden has saved the country from an incredible economic downturn as the result of COVID and has done everything within his power to bring our country back from the brink of fascism. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is over here claiming that Nancy Pelosi started an insurrection that he himself conspired and organized. But where our focus really needs to be right now is on the great job that Joe Biden has done to rescue us from the mess, the flaming dumpster fire that Donald Trump left us in when he left office. Stop. That's it. That's it. It's so simple. Okay. What you don't want to do is be running around reposting New York Times articles. Like, I can't believe the New York Times put 4 articles on the front page about Joe Biden's memory. Why are you doing the dirty work? Why are you doing the dirty work? So to me, like, again, I got to remind you all, this is a shut case. The big picture impact of Special Counsel Hur's report is that there are no criminal charges and there was no misconduct. And it's like one sentence in there that says that one of the decisions that he made, and this makes no logical sense, but you know, this is what we all need to be aware of. There's one sentence in the report that says he was an elderly man who's forgetful. Why is everybody screaming about it on our side of the fence? It's a sentence in a 57-page report or something like that says that there was no wrongdoing by the president of the United States. Let it go. Just let it go. So, you know, I mean, again, this is one of those situations where you've got to really think before you speak, because there's so much disinformation and misinformation and amplification of the wrong talking points and false equivalencies running around out there on social media and in the media generally right now. And we don't need to be adding to the pile. We need to be doing the work of effective messaging so that disaffected and disengaged voters understand what's really at stake in this election. And what's at stake is not whether or not Joe Biden could remember Mexico versus, Egypt last night, right? What's at stake is a sociopathic, malignant narcissist who is a fascist who wants to be a dictator, potentially taking back the White House and ending American democracy as we know it. And the fact that Joe Biden stands for American values, he has a vision for the future, he has done incredible work as a president, he may possibly be like one of the most, actually, I think he might even be the most effective president of my lifetime. That's the stuff that we have to be focused on, okay? Because anything else, even the stuff that's like, screw all these media people who were saying all these horrible things about Joe Biden's memory. Why are you drawing attention to that issue? I mean, it just, like, to me, this is one of the things we have to understand is that voter suppression is not just about the laws that are passed at the state level. It's not just about eliminating polling places. It's not just about like gerrymandering states. It's also about disinformation. It's about putting messages out that say Joe Biden is an incompetent, doddering old man with no memory, right? While Donald Trump is saying like psychotic, nonsensical non-sentences on the campaign trail, right? Like, we have to realize that part of what is happening is voter suppression. Joe Biden and Donald Trump are the same. That's voter suppression. Joe Biden is a doddering old fool who can't remember when his son died. Voter suppression. That's voter suppression. Okay? So don't engage in the conduct that is going to keep us from like reelecting him or make it harder for us to get out the vote. Okay? Have a very serious filter on what really matters and what doesn't. And this stuff, this report, this stupid one-liner that Hur threw in because he's an ideologue, none of this matters. Doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. And I'll just say one other thing. If you have to say something about it, either do the truth sandwich or say something like this. Okay. If the choice is between an 81-year-old president who brought America back from the brink of fascism and a fascist dictator who literally can't string a sentence together, I know who I'm voting for. That's simple. All right. And, I have to say something else to people, because there's people in the comments today who are like, I don't watch the news anymore. I can't even turn on the television. Sorry, I'm throwing my pen. I don't even watch MSNBC. I just have to say something else about this, okay? Bubbling yourself off from the news is not an answer. Because one of the things that we do need right now is actual information that is being presented in a logical fashion, all right? And while I've said this before, I said it actually this week, there are certain people that I don't watch on MSNBC anymore because I don't find them useful, okay? But if I have an opportunity to watch Rachel Maddow or Joy Reid, if I have an opportunity to watch Nicole Wallace when she's back from maternity leave, I'm going to watch that shit. Sorry. You can't just be like, oh, I'm turning it all off. Because, by the way, that's how people get disengaged. You need, if you're going to be working to mobilize the vote, to understand what other people are seeing. And what I mean by that is people who maybe are not as engaged as we are. So this is one reason why you have to have a media filter, not just disengage from the media. You have to have a strong media filter. You've got to know who you're listening to, and you've got to be able to vet what they're saying, and you've got to understand their own personal biases. That's the smart way to handle this, not click and never watching again. All right. You've got to be really, really smart about this. And I have to say one other thing. Biden's messaging right now is really strong. And it's really important for us to be paying attention to the spokespeople for the campaign who are out there talking about all of this. Gavin Newsom gave an interview earlier this week where he talked about how ridiculously sharp Joe Biden is. You want to know about that. So that if somebody in your neighborhood asks you a question, oh, Joe Biden, doddering old fool, can't remember the day his son died, you can be like, really? Because the people who actually work with him are out there on the media talking about how he's sharp as a tack, right? You want to be able to do that. So it's really critical to make sure that you are paying attention to media sources that are going to inform your own activism to get out the vote. All right. Okay. I want to talk for a second about the Mar-a-Lago ruling from Judge Cannon, which has gotten a lot of airplay and now is being kind of set up by Jack Smith for appeal. So essentially, she's issued a ruling around whether or not certain documents that are classified can be filed under seal. And it is a wildly inappropriate ruling, a ruling so inappropriate that it runs afoul of 11th Circuit precedent and also really kind of jeopardizes national security. One of the things I have to remind you all of is that in the classified documents case, because it relates to classified material, there is an ability to file automatic appeals on issues that ordinarily would not be subject to appeal before a trial has taken place. And so one of the things that's very clear here is that Jack Smith he's essentially pleading with the judge to reconsider this ruling. But second of all, he's also saying on the record in the briefs that she is defying 11th Circuit precedent and that it is manifestly incorrect. And he's putting it in the appropriate legal language, but he's doing it in a way that sets up a very obvious strategy for appeal. So the story isn't over here yet. She's already been overturned by the 11th Circuit once in this matter. I would not be surprised to see her overturned again. But again, one of the things that I have to just remind everyone of is that, we have to kind of write off that case right now. Okay. And I know that it's really hard when national security is at stake and when they're still missing documents and when he's moved everything to a locked closet and changed the lock so that his own lawyers can't get to it. I know it's really difficult. Okay. But my expectations of the outcome of that case are in the basement and dropping by the minute. And that is because of who she is. Now, there is 11th Circuit appeal ability. She will be overturned on appeal by the 11th Circuit on a number of issues. I have no doubt about it. Okay. But nobody should be watching that and having any expectations that it's going to end in a positive light in advance of November. Full stop. Keep your expectations very low and none of this will be shocking. Okay. She is a biased ideologue of a judge. And we know this. This is not news. This is not news to anybody who's been watching here. And it's not news to anybody who's been following her appointment from the very beginning. Right? She has interfered. She interfered in the investigation. Remember, she tried to set up this special master to review the classified documents to determine whether or not they really should have been removed from Trump's house pseudo club thingy. And, then was overruled by the 11th Circuit on that front. Just there's no reason to expect anything different out of her. And yes, I wish it was different. And yes, I wish she could be impeached. There's all sorts of things that I wish for. But for the interim, keep your expectations low. And you won't be disappointed, all right? Because the other thing is that, eventually, Who knows? After he loses in November, Trump will go to trial in that case at some point, and a jury will be sat and the evidence will be presented and he will be convicted because it's an open and shut case. Okay. All you got to do is realize that like what the game right now for Judge Eileen Cannon is delay. And if you see it through that lens, you know, you won't be disappointed. You won't actually, well, you might be disappointed because it's hard to not be disappointed, but you won't be shocked. Okay. So that's that. All right. People asked me some additional questions about the oral argument before the Supreme Court yesterday. And, you know, I did a big broadcast that was only on that issue yesterday. So you can go back and watch it if you happen to miss it. You know, I have to just kind of like repeat some of the things that I said yesterday very briefly, which is that, you know, if we lose on that front, which it looks like there's a strong possibility we will, that doesn't mean that Donald Trump isn't going to be tried. And it doesn't mean that we can't beat him at the ballot box. And again, I have to remind everybody to stay very, very focused. Now, do I agree with the comments that Sherilyn Ifill, the former general counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, has been putting out there about the fact that a lot of the questions yesterday really seemed academic and not based in reality, right? Like, oh, well, anybody could claim something's an insurrection. That's not really based in reality. We had an actual invasion of the Capitol building, like mass destruction. Thousands of people have been arrested and sent to prison. Like that actually happened, right? For the first time in American history. Do I think that there was a sort of sense that even people who are the liberal justices were a little bit divorced from the real world circumstances that we're facing in that matter? Yes, I happen to agree with that. Okay. But I do think that from the standpoint of, you know, how this is going to go, it's no predictor of what's going to happen on the issue of absolute presidential immunity, which doesn't exist. And it's no predictor on whether or not Donald Trump is going to be in prison. So, you know, all this merely impacts is whether or not he's going to be on the ballot in Colorado. And I personally am not, while I wish it was different, I personally am not losing sight of the end game, right? And, you know, yes, I was disappointed, as I said yesterday, in some of the questions from Ketanji Brown Jackson. Yes, I was disappointed in the viewpoint that seemed to be shared among both the conservative and the liberal wing of the court, that that the actual language of the third clause of the 14th Amendment might not extend to presidents. That's news to me and really any constitutional scholar. But, you know, I will just say that I don't. You have to, it's one of the reasons why, you know, the best advice I can give to all of you in this audience, you all know how much I love you. You know, we're more than 7 years in now, is that you really do have to keep in mind the bigger picture, right? Because everything is designed right now to drive you to outrage. And if you allow every single event in this incredibly insane news cycle to drive you to a place of outrage, the result of that will be that you will lose sight of the finish line. And you will be too burnt out to function effectively in your own community to mobilize people to vote. Okay. So we've all really got to start, you know, when something happens, looking at it through the lens of what does this mean for the long-term game, right? Supreme Court has problems. We know they have problems. Clarence Thomas sat yesterday. His wife is an insurrectionist. He's incredibly corrupt. Alito has been paid to take, you know, multiple $100,000 vacations to Alaska on private jets. We know that's a problem. There are all these questions about Kavanaugh's debts, and Amy Coney Barrett is like out of the Handmaid's Tale. And yes, we've got issues on the Supreme Court. Okay. No question. No question. And the only way that we fix that is by taking back the House, increasing our majority in the Senate, and making an enormous push after November for Supreme Court reform. Ethics codes that are mandatory, expansion of the Supreme Court so that like literally every circuit has their own justice, which was the way that it was supposed to be. And now we have 9, but there's 12 different circuits. It doesn't make any sense. Okay. All the other things that are in play here are relevant to how you respond to the moment by moment by moment events. Okay. The Her report is a nothing burger. Like it's a nothing burger. Like literally we do not need to be dedicating outrage or time or fight or flight response to it. Your adrenaline does not need to be on level 11 about this. It's going to be gone in 2 days. Maybe by the end of tonight, nobody's going to be talking about it. So really make sure that as you are considering the total scope of a particular event, that you're looking at it through the long lens. All right. Same thing with the Supreme Court yesterday. If we lose, what does it mean? it means that just like we had already planned, we're going to have to beat him at the ballot box. And he may be in prison by then anyhow. He may not even be the nominee, right? So, this is one reason I know so many of you come here, you're like, you've talked me off the ledge. I feel so much better. Well, I see all of this through the lens of 30 years of law school and legal practice, and also through the lens of a lifetime of activism and organizing. And you got to keep your eyes on the prize, right? You got to keep your eyes on the prize, because if you don't do that, you're actually undercutting everything that we're trying to achieve. All right. Okay. Monday is the due date for Trump's writ of certiorari to the Supreme Court, asking the Supreme Court to review the immunity decision out of the DC Circuit. I'm just going to repeat to everyone here that I think there's a strong likelihood that SCOTUS won't even take this case. And I want everybody to kind of pause, because he's doubtless going to say outrageous things in that writ of certiorari. And he's going to claim that, he should be allowed to murder people and get away with it. He won't put it in those terms, but, there's going to be all sorts of allegations. There has to be absolute presidential immunity, or anybody could be thrown in prison, even though literally no president in history has ever arrested his successor or his predecessor. And, I think we've got to be really mindful here that, there's so many more dominoes to fall, but that's coming Monday. And, again, I want everybody to be really well prepared that it's going to be something kind of loopy, because literally everything he files in every court is kind of loopy. And I also want to remind everyone that, the issue of presidential immunity is such that if they follow Donald Trump's logic, Joe Biden will be able to round up the entire Republican Party and drop them in Guantanamo, and nobody will be able to do anything. Joe Biden could execute Donald Trump or order his murder and never be prosecuted. That is not the way that this is going to go. This is the absolute immunity case is truly something that is just locked down. So I'm not worried about it. All right. Okay. Final thing I just wanted to mention last night was a few things about this press conference that was at the White House last night. And the way in which the press was just screaming. And it wasn't just Fox News, by the way. There were CNN reporters in there who were doing the same thing. And one of the things that folks should just be aware of is that right now, and some of this has to do with corporate media, and some of it has to do with the fact that I really do believe that mainstream media just doesn't know how to report on the fact that we have a fascist movement in this country with a fascist candidate. There is an attempt to try to horse race everything for ratings. Right. And the overwhelming abuse, frankly, of Joe Biden last night in that event was disgusting and really hard to watch. But I also want people to understand that we have a role to play in all of this, right? And what I mean by that is that there is a certain leveling of social media that needs to happen right now, where when things like that happen, it is called out. And, I know some of you are going to say, I only have 12 followers. Okay, but your followers may need to know what your perspectives are on the way that this is going down. What happened in the White House last night was wildly inappropriate and was also a form of false equivalency, given our theme of the day, right? Pete Ducey shouting out all those abusive questions. I mean, I can't stand that guy. But, Joe Biden had a really nice comeback to that. And so I want people to be mindful that we all have a role to play in this, and that the best counter to disinformation is the truth and not amplifying it. Like we've talked about earlier in this broadcast, do the truth sandwich, and make sure that you're playing a role of pushback against media figures who are doing the wrong thing, because we've learned a lot since 2016. And I think all of us need to be mindful that the things that we were shocked by in 2016, the Comey report, the badgering of Hillary Clinton, the whole her emails thing, many of us at that moment, I did do both, but, a lot of us ran into private Facebook groups in advance of that election to complain about what was happening. That was a bad call. Having 3.4 million people in a Hillary Clinton supporter group on Facebook that are not actually out there publicly countering all this horrific disinformation was honestly a part of the problem. Because the more that we are available to really contradict this stuff, call it out in real time, respond to reporters and sources that are doing, and media platforms that are doing it wrong, the more that you are out there willing to actually push through this and do it right, the more effective we will be at doing the work of countering disinformation during the election. For the person asking about the truth sandwich, go back and watch from the beginning because I already talked about it. So again, I am as horrified by anybody about what happened in the White House last night, but I do think that we've also got to be prepared that, the media is failing us right now. Mainstream corporate media is failing us dramatically because apart from anything else, they could be focusing on Trump's public declination and they're not doing it. And instead they're kind of like, taking talking points to make drama for clicks. And we all have a rule on that, right? Which is that, again, you don't repost things that are amplifying disinformation. All right. So yeah, I think that's it for today. I want to tell everybody again, I know yesterday was really crazy and I know a lot of us are having this sort of like insane news cycle hangover today. Just please this weekend, you guys, and I will be here for our Patreon subscribers on Sunday for Progressive Coffee Hour. If you have not yet become a paid subscriber, you want to join us for as little as $2 a month, you can hang out with us on Sunday mornings, which is really fun. But I will remind everyone that next week is going to be really chaotic. We have Supreme Court appeal. We now have the clock ticking on the entry of the E. Jean Carroll verdict, which means Trump has 30 days to post bond if he wants to appeal there. And we're still waiting on Engoron's decision in the New York civil fraud case. And frankly, I'm just going to tell you guys, I think that's coming early next week. I mean, he said like early to mid-February, like we're on it. So that's going to drop sometime next week. And that's going to be like a huge news cycle. So, as with everything else, I want to just recommend that if you're feeling overwhelmed or you've been feeling angry or you've been falling prey to this kind of like whirlpool of crazy outrage news, just take a moment this weekend to kind of like recalibrate. All right. And also, I just have to remind you all that it is really, really, really important that you volunteer and you do work to get out the vote and you sign up to campaign or canvass or text bank or phone bank. Rachel Sallow, who's a regional organizer for Indivisible, is right here in the comments reminding everybody that Indivisible's Truth Brigade has calls twice a month to teach the skills on how to do a truth sandwich. You could sign up for something like that. But getting involved in something that is directing like energy and your stress toward actual positive outcomes related to the election is going to serve you really well on a mental health front as well in this moment. All right. So please make an effort to do that. Don't just disconnect from the news like completely. You can take breaks, but it's really important for all of us to actually know what's being reported right now in real time and to follow legitimate news sources and develop, as I've said today, to really develop your own strong media filter because you need it. Because by the way, I'm just going to tell you one other thing. If you're not getting your news from mainstream sources and you're getting it all from social media, you are being targeted by disinformation and you will fall for it. Because like that's what it's designed to do. I've seen some very prominent accounts, people who I know, people who are friends, people who I've mobilized with, who have fallen prey to it in the last 6 months like nobody's business. And it's really scary to watch. So you're much better off like building up your own resources, managing your own mental health and responses, and developing really good media filtration strategies to find out who's reporting, where they're reporting from, what their own biases are, whether or not the information they're reporting is legit, what your own perspective is on all of that. And that's one reason why I'm here 5 days a week, because I want to give you guys the lens of like what you need to focus on and what you can really like dismiss. Bye-bye, her report. Let's just like stop talking about it. So all of that is really significant. All right. So that's my best advice for the weekend. I will see all of you who are Patreon subscribers in Sunday Coffee Hour. Can't wait to do another Ask Me Anything with all of you this weekend on that front. And I will be back here Monday, regular time. Quick programming note. You all know that I am involved in this fantastic documentary involving Joe Manchin and corruption in West Virginia and the destruction of West Virginia's environment and water supply and the health of its people. That film is premiering next week at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. So there is a strong likelihood that there will be no broadcast a week from today because I am going to be in Santa Barbara for a lot of the promotion related to that film. Don't quote me on that quite yet, but I'll keep you guys posted next week. I'm giving you a little bit of advance warning that I think there's not going to be a broadcast next Friday. So yeah, and I will have lots more to share about how that premiere went. The filmmakers are doing panels for those of you who live in or around Santa Barbara, Los Angeles, Montecito, or, further north. feel free to come down. The premieres are Wednesday and Thursday nights. And it's going to be like an amazing event. All right. So I will keep you posted on all of that, but there may not be a broadcast a week from today. All right. I will talk to all of you on Monday, if not before. Hopefully we'll see you in our Patreon only coffee hour on Sunday morning. Reminder, you can join us there at patreon.com/resistance live if you're a paid subscriber. And yeah, that's it. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Get some rest. Okay. Take care. Bye.